Kia ora. Right, I've got Councillor Brewer and Councillor Clive.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly will be supporting this, and I think it's been covered by previous speakers as far as it being a good move, avoiding a lot of potential complication with a two-tier system, and also a lot of controversy and legal uncertainty as well. So I believe, as you've always asked for when it gets to this point, Madam Chair, that this decision returns a lot of dignity to the process and integrity to the process, and I acknowledge the IMSB and the work they've done to get us here. It was always going to be impossible to navigate successfully and without controversy the entire plan and where the IMSB stood, given their many submission points across the entire document, not just pertaining to the mana whenua sites of value. And also, rightly or wrongly, or accurately or inaccurately, there was also a number of concern raised by some IMSB members also sitting on iwi authorities and or Maori trusts, which had also submitted on the unitary plan at different stages and on different parts. But most importantly, Madam Chair, I just want to make it clear for those of us, on behalf of some of us who have raised these issues, that where we were coming from predominantly was not so much around the IMSB's role or in this decision-making process, but around where this ultimate decision on the unitary plan best lay. And my argument and others around this table and in the community was that it should sit with the governing body, and it should be chaired by the only person around in this room that is elected at large, to avoid any constituent politics or accusations of any geographical bias, to have the Mayor, and particularly given that he's retiring as well, to have him chair this, I think is the most appropriate, and to have the ultimate decisions being made by elected constituent councillors is also the most appropriate. And I put it to you, Madam Chair, that was the expectation from the outset, not only from the broader public as to who would ultimately decide the unitary plan, but certainly by the intent of the legislation. Yes, the IMSB would be threaded all through it as a statutory right, but when you look on the IHP, the Independent Hearings Panel's own website, it has decreed, and we've read this out many a time, that it is for the governing body to not only decide at the end, as was suggested and approved last week, but it is for the governing body to, quote, consider the recommendations and to make decisions around the IHP's recommendations. Yes, there is the ability for the governing body to delegate, but it may delegate. It certainly shouldn't, there's not a provision where it must delegate. And so the IHP themselves on their website as to the process from here has always expected, as has the wider public and the intent of the enabling legislation, that it would be for the governing body not only to decide but to consider the recommendations. And so what this procedural motion achieves is that the governing body will consider and decide. That is the right place for it to be, and I'm happy to support this. It's a shame we didn't get there last week, but I acknowledge David Taipari and his members and all the other officers and councillors who have worked to get it to this point. Thank you.
Councillor Clive.
Madam Chair. Yes, I just want to acknowledge the Independent Maori Statutory Board, and I was a supporter of you being part of a two-tier look at this plan, and I think it's a shame. But anyway, it looks as though it's going to go, so I'm go through. So I'm actually going to query on point B. How can we possibly vote to commend the staff recommendations when we have been told very, very clearly we are not to show any predetermination? Commending those recommendations means we are showing predetermination, surely. So I want to ask that, and then I'd like actually some feedback from someone, because I was watching the news on Monday night, and here is, it came across, this was the late news, about what Auckland Council had decided to reject. That seemed to come through in a press release as though the staff recommendations were fait accompli, and that, so I just want some acknowledgement, one, on the press release, but legally, how can we commend staff? I'm not saying I don't commend them, and I may commend all of them in the end, but I don't believe we can commend them. I don't think we can vote on B, or surely it would be against.
I think it's the word commend is sort of a legalese commend rather than the we think it's great. I'll just get Catherine to explain that.
The importance of the entire phrase is relevant to the question that the councillor has raised. So it's commending the staff recommendations subject to discussion at the governing body. So it's commending in a general sense and reserving the discussion and detailed analysis. This is effectively it's got an element of this committee having an imprint of commending to the next committee without going into the detail or disclosing particular views on substantive matters. And it's that procedural aspect that's been thought through quite carefully, and I'm confident that this is not something that anyone could later rely on to say that there was a predetermination of any view around this table in relation to proceeding in this way.
Can you comment on the press release that went out? Because it seemed as though there was, certainly in the first paragraph, from memory, it almost shouldn't have said what it said.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what press
Can
release.
we can help? Yeah, we can we just
I'm just trying to
park
be
that for
procedurally
the-
correct here, because we've been
Sure.
told
I think it'll
we
be
have to do
easier.
it totally right.
No, Councillor Coe, your point's very well made, and I think B in particular has been clarified by our legal counsel, and the use of the words have been chosen exceedingly carefully to ensure the issue that you raise doesn't become an issue. I think the press release is not for discussion at the moment. It's gone. So speaking to the recommendation, I've got Councillor Crum, Councillor Walker, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Lee. Councillor Crum, were you? Yep.
I actually wasn't, but I will. No, look, can I just add my support to the recommendations and agree with the comments that Councillor Brewer earlier mentioned, in that we all agree around the table that governing body has the final authority. We were set in the two-tier system to ratify at the governing body level, so therefore we should also take through the final process at the governing body level. For me, it's not a sham, Councillor Clow, it's actually just mechanical final
shame,
authority.
not sham. Shame.
I also would just mention very quickly, I find it disappointing, Member Taupari's comments inferring that if we didn't support the two-tier system last week, that somehow we're not supporting your involvement in the process to date. That couldn't be anything further from the truth. Personally speaking, I sat on the Unitary Plan Committee alongside Member Namane, and do support your process, your involvement in the process up to this point. So this is not about support or non-support of the IMSB. It's simply, where is the final authority in terms of ratification? That's where the process should lay.
Okay, now we've had 4 speakers. 4. I'm going to, probably because this is an important item, we will need to tighten up as the process progresses, but I can now see everyone wants to make a comment. Can I, okay, hang on, Councillor, questions, good. Just to let you know who we've got on the list, I've got Councillor Walker, Cooper, Lee, Wood, and Casey with a question. So, Councillor Walker.
Sure. I'd just like to agree with the query that Councillor Clow raised around the use of the word commend. That word is not a word that we normally find in our agenda items. So, from my perspective, it's actually highly irregular. It is not a word that has generally appeared in agendas of the Hearings Committee, the governing body, the Regional Development Committee, or any other committee that I'm largely familiar with. And like Councillor Clow, I have a concern that the use of that word establishes the reports that we have as the baseline. And I do not necessarily accept that, especially where there are positions that are being taken here that are at odds with Council's earlier position. So I'm most uncomfortable with the use of that word. In regular use, we would use something like receive, for example, as compared to commend. So I would ask the officers as to giving us a choice of other words, because again, I say I am not comfortable with the use of that word commend, and I am familiar with the dictionary and the meaning of that word.
Okay. I think we've been given the answer by our legal counsel, and if we want to ensure the judicial prudence of this process, we need to follow
Well, through you,
legal
Madam Chair,
advice.
it's irregular. So it is not
and
a
this
word that
meeting-
we've used
Yeah,
in a legal sense before.
okay.
So I would suggest simply receive.
Councillor, let's
And
remember
I'll
that
put that
today's
forward.
irregular. This is the first time we've actually started to debate the unitary plan. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, what I wanted to say was that in lay terms, and I think we need plain language, we don't need to change it, but my interpretation is that this committee sends in good faith as a complete document ready for discussion. That's what commending means. Just the same as you say, I commend this person to you when you're introducing it. I'm sending them to you for your consideration. And that's all it means. It's not about praising the staff. That's actually commending recommendations which the staff have put together for us. So for me, I'm comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with C. And I want the members to know that I'm not voting against their non-participation. I'm actually going to vote for it because I think we need to move on. We can't spend most of our time doing this and everybody saying, you know, what a good idea it is. And I really commend, I actually commend the chairman and the staff for actually working through this so we don't have to go through a great circus. And really, you know, I thought we'd matured as a country, to be quite honest, but sadly, let's do this, let's get on with it, and thank the IMSB members for their contribution up to this point.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Lee, and then Councillor Casey, and then finally Councillor Darby, and I think we need to... Oh, sorry, and Councillor Wood. I had you in there after Councillor Casey.
After Councillor Lee.
After Councillor... Jolly good, after Councillor Lee then.
Well, I wrote it
Councillor
down,
Lee.
I was just interested.
Get to Councillor Lee.
Getting through all this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to acknowledge the words of the Mayor and the Chair of the Independent Maori Statutory Board and the other members. This is indeed an historic moment for Auckland. The unitary plan will significantly influence the shape and nature of Auckland well beyond our lifetimes. I want to congratulate the councillors, local board members, independent Maori statutory board members who wrote with the officers the notified plan. A lot of hard work was put in to that, and I think all in all it was a very expansive but overall fair document, a fair instrument, and in terms of the Act under which it is meant to operate, the Resource Management Act which is to promote the sustainable management of natural and physical resources. Dr. Graham Bush, on the occasion of the centenary of the Auckland City Council, which is our linear ancestor, wrote a book called Decently and in Order. And, Madam Chair, that was the way the Auckland City Council, over those 100 years, aspired to and largely succeeded in conducting the business of Auckland. I have to say, I strongly disagree with the way in which, subsequent to the notification of the proposed Auckland Unitary Plan, that this instrument has been managed. In other words, I want to reiterate again my objection to a panel appointed by ministers and
Councillor
officials
Lee,
in
Councillor
Wellington
Lee,